Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the February 8th meeting of the Rotary Club of Des Moines. I'm President Becky Greenwald, and I'm sorry we need to start our meeting with a moment of silence in honor of Bill Northey. I don't know if all of you know this, but Bill Northey is a 12-year member of our Rotary Club of Des Moines, a longtime public servant, our Iowa Secretary of Agriculture for 11 years, and was the first Undersecretary for Farm Production and Conservation under Secretary Sonny Perdue, and Bill passed away this week. And there will be visitation on Friday from 4 to 7 at the Iowa State Fairgrounds Ullman Family Youth Inn at 3000 East Grand. And then the funeral, the services will be held at 3 p.m. on Saturday at Valley Church in West Des Moines, and that's at 4343 Fuller Road. So if you just bow your head and let's have a moment of silence for Bill and his family. Thank you very much. And I'm going to move into our Rotary Buzz. And I wonder who might recognize who made this particular quote. I came across it the other day. Whatever Rotary may mean to us, to the world it will be known by the results it achieves. Who's that sound like? No longer living. How about our founder? That's attributed to Paul Harris, Rotary founder. And what made me think about that is because of these two gentlemen that are going to be sharing with us about some things that they achieved, which was a major achievement in the way of Rotary. But I just wonder what Paul Harris would think if he even knew about Rotary International's goal to rid the world of polio. And I wonder how many of us know the roots of how that actually started. So it turns out in 1979, Rotary International launched its very first Health, Hunger, and Humanity grant project, and they shortened it out to be the 3H project. And at that time, James Bomar was president of Rotary International. He was from Tennessee, and he and some other Rotarians traveled to the Philippines to launch the Philippine Poliomyelitis Immunization Project. And President Bomar and the other Rotarians actually were on the ground in the Philippines helping to administer those early oral polio vaccine into the Filipino children's mouths. So that was 1979, and here we are 45 years later, and Rotary has had a leading role in helping reduce polio cases by 99.9% since that very first project to inoculate Filipino children. And of course today the fight to end polio is led by the Global Polio Eradication Initiative, another acronym, JPEI, and that's a public-private partnership led by national governments, and Rotary is a GPEI founding member along with core partners, which are UNICEF, the U.S. Centers for Disease and Control Prevention, the World Health Organization, and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, as well as the support of many others. And of course we know we have that wonderful $2 to $1 matching initiative with the Gates Foundation. So we are thrilled to share more information about polio, and you'll hear a lot about it from these two gentlemen in a little bit. But now, we don't have anybody that signed up to be the inspiration today. So maybe they figured we've got lots of inspiration already happening. So I'm going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance and the 5-way test. Stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And the 5-way test. Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? Is it fun? Thank you. Greet one another. good to see you.
Thanks for joining us tonight.
I see so many people I want to get to.
Software, I was like, it's like starting over. The best is all these reviews, you know, all the old guys are telling you something different. This is not going to go well.
Okay, I am so happy to be introducing all of our guest members today. I think these folks were a big draw, and we're so happy that you're here. And I'd like you to stand as I call your name and remain standing, and then we'll applaud you all at one time. So we start out with Josh Burns, who's the board member with the Iowa Utilities Board and a guest of Chaz Allen. Please stand, Josh. And Tej Dewan, Principal Financial Group. You're here.
Right over here.
Oh, yeah. Well, Josh, where are you? Excuse me. I thought he was here. I thought I said hi to him.
You might have stepped out.
Oh, okay, sorry. You didn't know I paid that much attention to you, did you? I know, I saw him. Okay, Tej, thank you for standing. And then Andy, Tej is with Principal Financial Group and a guest of Steve Jacobs. Andy Mason is Vice President of Aviation at McClure Engineering and a guest of Josh Brady. And Clint Martin with Remedy Intelligent Staffing, guest of Arden Borgen. And then we have Susan must have known, Josh, that you had 2 guests a couple weeks ago. She has 3, so the competition is on. We have Jim Gossett, CEO of the Raccoon Valley Electric Co-op, a guest of Susan Judkins. Lane Crowley, Crowley, thank you, with RDG, a guest of Susan Judkins, and Malik Schroff, John Deere Financial, and a guest of Susan Judkins. So please welcome all of our guests. Okay, so now it's tumbler time, so please consider donating $5 into the cup on your table if you don't already have a little green $sign on your name badge. And even if you do, we always gratefully accept donations because these are what feed our Rotary Club of Des Moines Foundation. And as always, thank you so much for your support. So now, we have the pleasure of introducing officially a not-so-new member who joined us last year but had not been introduced yet. So Melissa O'Neill, will you head on up? Melissa is the CEO of Central Iowa Shelter and Services, and when you see Ted Corrigan, please tell him thank you for inviting Melissa and sponsoring her to become a member of our club. So I know Ms. Melissa was hesitant about some of these 5 questions that we answered, so if she has a look of surprise, don't worry, she's okay with it, right?
My assistant did it for me. I will be equally as surprised. I said, what mugshot did you do? I'll be equally as surprised as you are.
Okay, so you've got a free day. What would we find you doing? Anything outside, golfing, running, biking, kayaking, gardening. Good?
Yeah, that was pretty good.
Okay. And where in the world have you traveled and you can't wait to go back?
Ireland.
Ah, you got it right. Okay. What's the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
Yeah, I have this one. So my uncle in 6th grade passed away of AIDS, and it actually played out very well in what he inspired me to do as we were going into the pandemic with the shelter. And he began writing his memoir. And the first paragraph of his memoir is a quote that I think I've memorized since 6th grade. And it says, no matter how dark the situation, remember how truly lucky you are and give just a little bit back. It may be tomorrow's license to live another day. Oh, wow. And he passed away the next day.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Did he get it right?
Yes, he did. We didn't know that he passed away the next time.
Yeah,
Okay.
the very next day.
Yeah, gosh. So what talent or skill do you possess that might surprise and delight someone?
I have no idea.
She is an All-American Hall of Fame collegiate basketball player.
Basketball and high jump.
Yep, basketball.
2
and
sports.
High jump?
Yeah.
Oh, didn't get that part.
Yep,
We better
basketball
talk to
and high
that sister. Okay, and you're joining Rotary. What can't you wait to tell your friends about our organization? He's said,
What do you say?
apart from being the oldest club in Iowa, I get the opportunity to have lunch with some of the most genuine, interesting people in Central Iowa.
Very true.
Great.
Yes.
Okay, so we're not done yet.
Oh, okay.
I wanted to tell you a little bit. The hot seat's over. So.
Oh, okay.
You didn't win a washing machine, and this would have been the newlywed game.
Okay. We could use one at the shelter.
Okay, I figured you could. Melissa is the CEO of Central Iowa Shelter and Services, and she's been in that position since February of 2016. Prior to that, she was vice president at IJ, and she has consistently served in leadership roles, including being assistant women's basketball coach at Indiana University at Pennsylvania. Okay. And Melissa lives in Indianola with her husband Jeremy, daughter Katie, and son Patrick. And MIA, the missing in action, is their big, lovable Weimaraner
Yeah,
dog.
Mia.
Mia. Mia. Oh, thank you. So Mia.
Okay, couldn't come up with the name. She disappeared.
I tell you what, I'm so used to acronyms. So sorry. Yeah. But it says missing
It
in
was
action.
fitting. Yeah, so the puppy kept running off, and so she was always missing in action. We could never find where she was, and so we just said, "Where's Mia?" And that was our way of saying the dog disappeared.
Oh gosh. Well, will you join me in welcoming our newest member? And now, Leslie, it's your turn to come on up, and Leslie Schaefer will be introducing our guest speakers.
So for me, it is such an honor to be able to introduce our two speakers. I do have their official introduction right here, and Peter looked at it and said, throw it away. Tell us what you know about us. So, because I do know both Peter Tien and John Ockenfels, I wanted to make sure I got his last name right. And I was there when they landed. So I don't know, how many of you followed their flight? So Becky and I both followed their flight, and Becky actually drove when we went to watch them land, and it was so exciting to be a part of this. And I know it was many, many years in the planning. I don't want to steal their thunder, but I know Peter because of his work with the Red Cross. And I know John because he's a cousin of Peter's. So there you go. But it's just a real honor to have them speak to us today. We're going to learn so much about their experience, about how COVID impacted their flight plans, how everything kind of got moved back and around. But I don't want to tell the story for them. I want you guys to come on up and tell the story. Thank you so much.
You know, I was really surprised that many people followed this adventure. You know, and it, that was probably the biggest thing that I learned as we went. Yeah, let's do it this way. That was probably the biggest thing I learned as we went around. Each stop, there's more and more people that would show up, and at one of the stops, it was Pago Pago, American Samoa. We didn't even tell them we were coming, and we landed, and 8 or 9 people were out on the ramp waiting for us to taxi in. And it's been that way through the whole trip. So now we're going to go through a program. Peter, why don't you take this and do the introduction?
I appreciate it, and thank you for the invite, and thank you, Susan, for Jenkins, who I gave a presentation in Benton, Iowa, and her dad was at that club, and that's how we got connected. So I invite that, and of course, always honored to be with Becky and Leslie here with the Red Cross. This was a dream that started back in 2019. It was a dream I had. I just went to my wife and I said, I wonder if I could fly my plane around the world. At that point, I had no idea whether it could be done or had it been done or anything. And I said, I'm thinking about doing that. What do you think? And she said, sure, honey, I think it's a great idea. What I learned later was she was the perfect mom or husband or whatever, you know, or kids. Your kids come up and tell you some wild, crazy idea, and you say, sure, great idea. Go spend your time. They knew she knew where I was doing, where I was at, not in trouble. It was a year later when I went back and said, here, I've got a plan. She looked at me and says, you're serious. And she says, you're not going to fly a plane around the world solo. told, oh, you better find somebody as crazy as you, and that's how I found John, my cousin. He had 3 airplanes, and I said, anybody with 3 airplanes, it has to be crazy. And so that started the discussion with John back in 2019. We were planning to take off in 2020 and 2021 and 2022. We canceled 3 times. The first time we were 10 days away from departure when COVID broke out, shut the world down. The second year, COVID continued. And then finally, we knew we were going to get off because COVID was resolved at that point in 2022. And at that time, our route was up through the Philippines, Japan, Russia, into Alaska. And lo and behold, Russia invades Ukraine. And so that shut us down for 3 years. We got evicted. They sent us a letter that says you're no longer welcome to, we withdrew all of our passes. But it was, we had a tough decision to make because we had planned, we had spent a lot of time and effort planning and making communications with people, and the dream was ripped out to us. And we got to the point of saying maybe we're not supposed to do it. And we knew that the only route available to us was the southern route, the old romantic route down through all the way through the Pacific Islands, Australia, and up to Hawaii. But it's considered the most dangerous route. It's considered a route that's not a preferred route anymore because the difficulty of getting fuel, getting supplies, and any type of emergency services. And the plane we were going to fly the first 3 years could not handle the flight down to the south, couldn't carry enough fuel. So John and I, instead of giving up in the old Rotary fashion, instead of giving up a dream, we
took
said,
a step forward.
took a step forward, and we sold my plane that I had, and we bought the plane you see on the handout there, a Cessna 210. John flew one similar to that for 28 years, so he knew how to fly it. It could carry 1,000 pounds more in weight than the plane I had, the Piper Lance, and we needed that for our longest flight of this flight. Was 17 hours across the South Pacific, non-stop from Pago Pago, America, Samoa, up to Honolulu, and then 15 hours from Honolulu, Maui, over to Oakland. At that point, we were 1,000 pounds overweight. That's going to be part of our story, but we want to get moving here into...
Turn it on.
Turn it on. Do that.
Well, as we're waiting for that, next one's gonna be polio, isn't it?
Yeah.
As he's working with that, I'll just, as we're talking about polio eradication, that's kind of what started the emphasis on fundraising for us. When we started this trip, we were not flying for Rotary. We were just 2 guys that wanted to fly an airplane around the world, thought it'd be pretty cool and see if we could get it done. Then we got into the fact of why waste a good trip? Let's make it mean something for somebody. We're both in Rotary. Peter's from District 5970, Cedar Rapids. I'm from District 6000 right here, and I'm from Iowa City. We decided to make it for polio eradication for Rotary. And so we started working on that. And because both of us have been involved with polio, I've been involved with working with polio through Rotary for many, many years, so that was a natural. The picture up in the top corner, we tell the story kind of the same way. That is a picture that, even though it's not that picture, I remember that scene from when I was about 5 or 6 years old. And that scene, actually it was about 5, that scene was in Cedar Rapids, Iowa at the Veterans Memorial Center when my mom and all the neighbors all rounded up all the kids and shoved them into a few cars and we headed downtown and walked in there and saw the sea of humanity in front of us. Everybody's lining up, going by tables. Well, as I walked by a table, I got a shot. That was my polio inoculation. That was the first year they were doing it. So in Cedar Rapids. A lot of people don't know, but Cedar Rapids was, like Iowa City, some others, it was actually a test center. So I got the shot. Peter was lucky, he got a sugar cube. So, but they liked him better. And so, of course, we all know what the iron lung is. We've seen those, we've heard the stories, we know how horrific that can be. And I think you said there's, what, 2 or 3 people still in iron lungs today in the world? So they're still out there. So we're gonna move forward again here, if it'll move. But one of the things we talk about that line is that when we came outside, I remember my mom, some of her neighbors were kind of crying, laughing and having fun, but later on I asked my mom why they were crying. This was just a few years back where she passed. And she said that's because that's when we found out that our kids weren't going to die from polio. And so that kind of stuck with me after that. And all those years I never heard that. So, does it move? Next. There you go. Peter's up here in the upper left-hand corner. This is Peter and I in Karachi, Pakistan as we went around. The one place that stayed constant, as we made these plans in and out, back and forth, and all the changes, is that we were going to Karachi, Pakistan, because that was where the center point of polio is in the world. Karachi, Pakistan, and Afghanistan. That's it. So Peter, why don't you tell them what's going on up there in that upper corner?
Well, for me, this was one of the highlights of the trip, was the upper front. Now, Karachi, Pakistan, the ghettos I've been in a lot of horrible places in the world. The Karachi, Pakistan ghettos is pretty bad. When we spent a couple of days there visiting with the residents, people who are living there, a lot of them refugees who are coming in from Afghanistan, fleeing to Pakistan. And part of the effort, we're seeing the numbers, 12 new cases last year, is Afghanistan did not allow the vaccination. And so these refugees are now bringing the polio into Pakistan where they're able to get the vaccination. And they've got caseworkers there working in the ghettos. Interesting concept is they've actually hired the women who live in the ghettos to be the representative and the vaccinators to vaccinate the children coming in as refugees, because they can relate to the people who actually live there. And it's opened up tremendous doors of health care for the families and for the children, big stuff. But for that upper left picture, that was the first child I was able to vaccinate. Now, we planned this for over 4 years, as I said. And it touched me very powerfully to be able to put those drops in the mouth of that child and to know that they were polio free. And that it's because of the work that we all have done as Rotarians, and that the mission of what this fight was all about. I always look at the bottom photo as a very powerful statement. And John, tell them why why it's so important, what we're doing, what that picture represents.
Well, again, obviously that's me. The lady in the red is one of the trainers and one of the ladies that is doing the inoculations. But the gentleman that's holding his baby, that's what's unusual about this picture, because what we've been hearing for years and years is that only the mothers are allowed to deal with the vaccinations. Only the mothers take care of the kids. The fathers don't have a part in that. Well, that's one picture that shows that that's not true. This dad was adamant about bringing his young baby out to be vaccinated, and that's what we did. So, and we had that happen several times. It wasn't just this once. So, sidebar here, because I'm in a Rotary Club, how many people here are familiar with National Immunization Days or may have attended one? How many of you've attended one? Anybody else? It's very, very powerful if you get that opportunity. It's not done yet, and I'm going to tell you right now, if you get an opportunity, it's going to go forward for a number of years yet. Take somebody up on that. Go do an immunization program somewhere in the world. You're going to be amazed at how it's going to work out. End of sidebar. So in any event, this gentleman is the person that's going to help set that stereotype straight. Let's go to the next slide.
I want to just say the environment that we're living in the ghettos there it was a dangerous, it was probably one of the most dangerous stops we had.
It was.
And then for us to be taken around through the ghetto and spend a couple of days there, we were always under police escort. So when we were moved about, we had 2 squad cars with lights and sirens in front of us. We had an SUV, modified SUV that we were transported in, and we had 2 trucks full of Indian Army Rangers behind us. And as soon as I stepped out of the car, the one truckload of soldiers with guns would surround me and the other one would surround him, so we could safely move in the environment. That's how.
And what happens if you don't pay attention to them, sir?
See, as Leslie and Becky know, I don't sometimes do what I'm told to do, and I walk fast, and I got ahead of my detail, and I was sternly told by the officer in charge, Captain Tian, get back within your inner circle here. So I had to back up between my guards. But we did get in there safely. But how harsh the conditions are. If we think about clean water, and polio is transmitted by contaminated water. They took us to a new well that was dedicated not far from where these pictures were taken. And it's a small building. It had 6 spigots in the front. They had a water purifying machine on the inside where someone slept overnight at, just to make sure it wasn't tampered with. Those 6 faucets provided water to the people in the ghetto. Those 6 faucets provided water to 29,000 people. And that's the only fresh water they had. And that's
Open 24/7.
Open 24/7. But this trip, we were told, couldn't be done, shouldn't be done. Nobody in their right mind would do it. And especially when we switched to the southern route, because it was difficult, the tougher security issues, We couldn't get the fuel. In fact, 40% of the fuel we used on this flight had to be pre-positioned in 55-gallon drums. And so like Pago Pago, we ordered four drums, had to be shipped in by a freighter from New Zealand, offloaded, gone through customs, and then we had to hand pump all these barrels into the aircraft to get the fuel we needed and to make sure it was not contaminated. So a lot of work went along.
Yeah, this was at international airports, by the way. This wasn't just some bum little airport out in the middle of nowhere. International airports deal with what? Jets, right? They don't have piston-powered airplanes. We had to land at international airports to clear customs. And there wasn't any other small airports around as you go around the world.
Yeah.
They just don't exist like we have here in the United States.
But as we said, we could not do the flight if it wasn't for our family support, our loved ones, and for Rotarians around the world, which the story is. Now, what's so unique about this flight? Out of 7.4 billion people on Earth, 400 have been, 4,000 have climbed Mount Everest, 500 have been in outer space. But in the history of aviation, only 702 pilots have flown a single-engine airplane around the world. And of that 702, there's only 268 of us alive in the world today that have accomplished this in a single-engine airplane.
And that's actually tracked. We didn't just make that number up.
Yeah, so this is a registered flight. So it is extremely dangerous and extremely rare what we've done. And that's what brought attention to it. That's a picture of the aircraft. You also have it on the cards. We handed out a picture of John and I in front of the aircraft and the full map of our flight on the back side of it. This was landing in the Netherlands. This is a Cessna 210 turbocharged, 6-passenger, single-engine aircraft. And so it's got, you're really proud. If you look at that picture of us in this, you can see how close we were, elbow to elbow, shoulder to shoulder in the cockpit. Now we talked about fuel. Behind us was a 165-gallon fuel bladder that we had inside. That's like driving around Des Moines with 3 55-gallon drums in the back seat of your car. And so this trip, we had this fuel bag sitting right behind us, and so we didn't even have room to stretch our legs to lay back on.
In addition to 120 gallons in the wing, in addition to another 120 gallons in the wing. So 280 gallons of gasoline when we took off.
It was a good time to give up smoking, wasn't it, John?
Yeah.
So this is our office in the cockpit, heavily computer-driven, navigational systems, redundant radio systems, all the way down to the iPads where, you know, we both have complete capacity on each side with the iPads. We had HF radio, high-frequency radio, never worked on the trip. But that created problems when we were overseas. We had satellite phones that we were connecting up through satellites, but that failed us on one of the main jumps of this, and we'll talk about it here on another slide. But that's our office for 90 days flying around the world. Everything was driven by power.
100% of that is electrically driven. They took the vacuum system out of this airplane about 8 years ago, and they completely remodified the instrument panel. And so these are very, very state-of-the-art, up-to-date instrumentation in the airplane, which is why we bought this airplane.
Well, here's a short video from Brisbane, Australia, made by Brisbane International Airport. It's just about 2 minutes. Also at the very end, you'll see the Southern Cross, which is the first aircraft to fly across the Pacific non-stop, and it was over 100 years ago. And it's in this museum at the International Airport, climate controlled. The top was secure because it's a national treasure. They opened up the doors and let John and I actually go up and stand next to the aircraft. It was an honor by the Australian government.
I told my wife I was going to plan it, and she said, "You're not doing it by yourself. You better find somebody else as crazy as you to go on this flight."
Downtown Brisbane.
39 stops around the world in 21 different countries.
We did all of our planning, and we found out on the first day we could take all that planning and throw it out the window.
One of the most powerful moments of this trip was when we were working in the ghettos of Karachi, Pakistan, knowing that you've given that child a chance to be polio-free the rest of their life. It brought me to tears. next to a freighter that's going by, and we'll start again on another adventure.
And this is the Southern Cross here.
You can see those glass panels that form that barrier around it.
It is inspiring, and especially as we're trying to go across the Pacific. I'll take some courage from the people that were on this flight and be part of your heritage.
We can shut off that. So this is a map that you have on the handouts we've given. It's a final version of it. We were supposed to do 21 countries, 37 stops, and we ended up doing 19 countries and 37 stops around the world. We planned 2 or 3 days at each stop just so we could do see the site, get rested, plan for the next day of these long journeys. Average length of flight was probably 6 hours. It was the longest, as we had several 8 hours, and then we had, of course, the two 16 and 15 and 17 hours. And seats similar to what you're sitting in. So if you think of just putting 2 of these seats together, that's a room we had in the cockpit. You can see more than 60% of the flight was open water. In that video, you heard me say if something goes wrong, we'll put down in front of a ship and hopefully they'll rescue us. That's what they teach us in survival class. What they don't teach you is there are no ships.
I actually have an app on my iPad that I set up before we left. So it shows you all the shipping schedules for all the ships in the open oceans around the world, which is great if you're flying over a shipping lane. We weren't.
Yeah, in the entire flight of 180 hours and 90 days, we never saw a single ship at sea. And in fact, we only saw 1 aircraft in the air, and that was on the longest flight. We'll talk about that, Pago, America, Samoa, where the aircraft was 1,000 feet above us going the opposite direction and came out of the cloud. By the time we saw it was gone, we didn't even have time to talk to it, but what's unique about it was the same aircraft that he was crew member in Vietnam. The C-130.
The C-130 Air Force airplane.
So, of all the planes in the world to fly over it, that was unique to see that. But there's the statistic. We've got over on the far left, 30,000 miles, 37 landings, 19 countries, 180 hours on a 90-day trip. What impressed us was the fundraising. Now, John and I started off as 2 old farts flying around the world. We figured, okay, what kind of money are we going to raise? But we figured we might raise $10,000. And then we knew at the Gates match that would give us another 20 for 30,000. Not too bad for a dream to fly around the world and raise money for polio. 9 weeks before the event, before we took off, we had 2 fundraisers scheduled. And we were really down in the mouth over that because we said it's going to fail. We had been writing Rotary clubs around the world, trying to reach out to them, saying, hey, we're coming, can we do fundraisers, can you help us promote this? And nobody was responding.
Typical Rotary.
Yeah. And so it was 9 weeks before we went out to dinner with the wives, and we told them how disappointed we were, and they said, look guys, what's your #1 goal? #1 goal was to come home alive to our families. They said, forget about the fundraising. You got 2 fundraisers scheduled, let it go. Start focusing on coming home to us alive. So we did, we gave it up, and in their wisdom, they said, give it to God. If God wants you to be successful with fundraising, He'll make it happen, because otherwise you're not gonna make it happen. So we gave it up. 2 weeks before we departed, we ended up with 24 fundraisers around the world.
Typical Rotary.
Yeah, people with phones just started calling, and people say, oh, we hear you're coming. Even while we were on the flight, people were saying, hey, we hear you're out in Germany and you're headed here. Can we get together? We want to do a fundraiser for you. They were just popping up all over the place. And so, that became just stunning to us, that we ended up with 24 plus fundraisers around the world. What stunned us even more is our 10,000 goals, we're now exceeding $2 million in what we've raised for polio. That does include the Gates match, but what's even more important, because this was not a fundraiser to pay for the flight, that 100% of all the cost of this flight John and I are paying for. And so 100% of the $2 million plus, including the Gates match, is going to Rotary Foundation to eradicate polio in the world. John, you want to talk a little bit about Goose Bay here?
Sure. Oh, one of the planes, we're gonna try to kind of make this a little quicker so we don't run out of room, but time rather. But one of our biggest early jumps was from from Goose Bay, Nova Scotia, I'll try that again, Newfoundland. Goose Bay, Newfoundland, over to Reykjavik, Iceland. We skipped Greenland. We were going to land in Greenland, but it was icy, snowy, and pretty nasty weather, which was that was the directive for the entire flight up to that point. By the time we left Goose Bay, we were already 6 days behind schedule because of weather and a maintenance issue. And so May 19, 2023, day that lives in infamy, we left Goose Bay and went direct to Reykjavik, Iceland. We might have trouble landing there today because of the volcanoes. But that was just over, the show's 7 hours, it's really closer to 9 by the time you factor everything in. From the time that we left until a few miles out over the ocean, we didn't have any radio communications again. And the only way we could communicate was by talking to overhead airliners that would relay for us. And so you see on the map, it's kind of green when we first start, and then there's a blank space for a while, then it gets green again at the other end. The only place we had radio communication and satellite communication was where it's yellow or green. Satellite phone worked okay, but it was difficult to hear. So let's keep moving again here for a minute. But I'm sorry, I missed the important part of that. You saw the two guys in the picture. Those suits that we were wearing are called survival suits, and that's what keeps us alive if we land in the water. You can literally survive in those for quite a few hours, even in the freezing, frigid water. And that also happened to be my birthday. So, that's why it was good. Out of Brisbane, another interesting flight. We had a problem when we landed on our very first stop in New Hampshire. We lost the alternator on the airplane. And fortunately, we were at a big airport, they could fix that. Unfortunately, it was 5:30 on a Friday afternoon, and they couldn't even look at it until the following week. So we lost 5 days for that. It was the following Thursday before we actually got on our way. That comes into play. Coming out of Brisbane, you saw the nice pictures and all that as we were leaving. We were about an hour and a half to 2 hours out of Brisbane when all of a sudden I noted that the red lights were flashing on the alternator, and we had lost our alternator again. We were losing all of our electrical power. Fortunately, we have a backup alternator, but it only does about a third of the load of the main. Switched to the backup, called Brisbane, said we're coming back, didn't even need a discussion. Because it's a long way to the next stop at New Caledonia. And so, long story short, that wavy line was going out, that nice straight line was coming back. Very simple thing, a wire had simply come off the alternator and burned off because it wasn't tight. And next morning we were on our way again. Let's go to the next slide.
But you could see with the power, with the dash that we had, without power, we've been lost. So we'll go to the next one.
Yeah, let's keep going.
This is the Honolulu jump from Pago Pago. Again, look at the dotted line there. Look at the dotted line. You can see Pago Pago, we left at 4:30 in the morning. We got a controller from another island because our airport was shut down. We had him online for about 30 seconds and said, we've taken off. We're headed to Honolulu. He acknowledged it, and we lost communication at that point. The rest of basically the 17 hours is dotted line. We did not have verbal communication with anyone until 60 miles outside of Honolulu. We were putting position reports up every 15 minutes via satellite. When we got to Honolulu, they had received less than 40% of our transmissions. So at any point along that route, had we had a problem and had to go down, we'd be off everybody's radar and not be found probably at sea. We'd been totally lost and out of communication. Our HF radio didn't work, so we couldn't use that. Satellite, they can't explain other than it's such a barren part of the world with all water and no islands and people that it's
They're not focusing on
they're not focusing on satellites on there. And we were flying just for a little bit of side story. We were flying just to the east of Howland Island where Amelia Earhart went down. This is probably the most, if you look at the picture of the cards, I've got brown hair. This is where I got my white hair. We were 6 hours outside of Honolulu. All of a sudden we realized that the calculations showing up that we were going to be an hour short of making Hawaii.
We planned that and researched that a half a dozen times, and everything showed we were going to have plenty of fuel. But when we were in the air, we couldn't account for it.
This is doing mathematical calculations of pumping fuel out of the bladder up into the wings and making these notes. So for an hour, we're trying to figure out there's got to be a problem in the calculations, and somehow we got to tell the rest of the world that we were not in communication, that we were going down in the ocean. Now, survivability of going down the ocean in daytime, perfect weather conditions, perfect wave conditions, 12%. We're not scheduled to arrive in Hawaii till 11 o'clock at night, so we'd be going down around 10 o'clock at night in stormy weather, storms around Hawaii, and nobody knew where we were at. So odds of survivability was nil. It was after an hour of calculations that we found an error in a calculation that we had transferred 2 30 gallons of fuel to the wings when it only should have been 130 gallons. That 30-gallon error gave us 2 hours of fuel when we landed in Hawaii. But for that hour, we were saying goodbye because we knew we weren't going to survive that night.
It was a bad day.
Yeah.
Actually, it wasn't a bad day, it was a great day. So, let's keep going. Yep. We made it to Hawaii, by the way. Now, let's keep going. This just shows what polio does. You all know that story so far. And
This is the important date.
yes, this is a great day. Go ahead.
Yeah, this is the important date of history. Anybody know what happened on October 1977?
27th.
27th of October? That was the last reported case of smallpox in the world. Smallpox was declared eradicated from mankind in 1980. We're looking for what's the last date of a child being infected by polio, and when will this be declared over with once and for all. We've been fighting this since 1982, trying to end it. But everybody has hope. You always hear about hope. How many people here have hope that we're going to see the end of polio? Raise your hand. John, they haven't gotten the message.
I got that message. What I want to tell you is that on our very first morning in Karachi, Pakistan, they set up a phenomenal program of introducing us to World Health Organization, UNICEF, and Rotary, and the partnership that they have. And we had a very good program presentation from all of them telling us what's going on. It's phenomenal. So we get done with that program, and they slide back to the table and say, now we're going to have a press conference. And of course, Peter and I look at each other and go, press conference? That wasn't on the schedule. Well, it has to do with all these TV reporters and other reporters, everybody at the other end of the table. And so the first guy gets up, a TV reporter, he looks across, and he says, Captain T, by the way, we were always referred to as captain in that part of the world, because if you're an airplane pilot, you're automatically captain, okay? I want to bring that to the States. That's kind of cool. So anyway, we got promoted. So Captain Tehan, again, now that you've seen all this, you've heard all this, do you still have hope to see the end of polio in your lifetime?
And that's where 23 years as spokesperson for the American Red Cross kicked in, because I said, now what the heck am I going to say it through my mind? And so I paused, I asked him, what's the question again, trying to figure out an answer. And again, kind of like the fundraiser, I came up with an answer, I don't know where I came up with it, so it was put in my mouth. And I said, I have to be honest, John and I are flying around the world, we're trying to raise awareness, we're trying to raise money, we worked here in the ghettos for 2 days. And he says, I gotta tell you, I no longer have hope that we're going to see the end of polio. I'll no longer have hope. And the Rotarians fell off their chairs fainting, and the media perked right up thinking they've got a huge story. And after a pause, I said, I don't have hope, I believe. Not that we can, but I believe we will, and that we are seeing the end of polio. And that moment in time
That was a changer.
game changer for the whole flight. It just blew up. It was headline news in Pakistan. Rotarians believe. Airports in the future when we land, people are standing with believe signs. We get into presentations talking about the flight. We have groups, 300 people standing up like they were at a sporting event, stomping their feet, clapping their hands, saying, we believe. I said, wishing and hoping is for birthdays. The children of the world need us to know that we believe that the end is close, and it is because of the work of Rotary. You know, and we are that close and that committed to this. We even got called overseas by Rotary International, who says, you've just changed the dialogue. of polio discussion in the world by believing and not hoping. And so we're encouraging you to start believing and stop hoping. Believe is so much powerful, and if we believe, and the children of the world and the donors of the world and the people of the world will believe that we're serious about this. It is, somebody wrote us a few weeks ago and gave us a Greek meaning of believe. And the Greek meaning of believe, or the Latin meaning, I guess, is believe, is committed to something so intently that you're willing to risk your life for it. This is truly a flight that John and I risked our lives for, and that's what we believe in. And we hope that we can convince you and the rest of the world to start believing, because the children need to know what that final date is. And we are so close, we can't give up. We told the people in the ghetto that we had saw a sporting thing, a sporting broadcast where 3 runners, and the one runner was so close to being in, he fell down, and the other 2 runners came up, and they didn't run by him, they picked him up and carried him across the finish line. I said, the guy in first place are those people in the front lines of this fight trying to end this. And all they hear is people think polio doesn't exist anymore. It exists. We need to be the second, third place runners and pick them up and get them over the finish line. And we can do that if we start believing in it.
And one thing I'm gonna end with, we usually say this somewhere along the way. We are very, very blatant about asking for people to donate to the Rotary Foundation for the prevention of polio going forward. Not to the Flight to End Polio, not to John and Peter. If you have the inclination to make that donation, which we hope you do, on the pay to line, we want you to write these 3 words, the Rotary Foundation, because that's where the money goes. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Wow. Can we believe? We can take 2 questions.
Yes, sir.
Did you read Charles Lindbergh's "We" before you went on the flight?
Question is, did we read Charles Lindbergh? We, and I have read that over the years, and it's a very powerful book. And we, in fact, are so grateful for all that he did for us. One of our goal was to land in Hana, where he's buried at, pay tribute to him. But because of conditions on Maui, it just wasn't possible, so we had to miss that grave. So thank you. Yes.
On those extra long flights, you know, I heard a 17-hour, a 14-hour, obviously part of the Hawaii one, you were trying to figure out how not to die.
Right.
But I have to imagine there's some calm downtime too. What do you do to pass the time? It's not like you're watching Netflix or anything.
The 17, 14-hour flight, what did we do in our downtime? Really, we were surprised. We took videos with us, we took books with us, magazines with us. We had it all scheduled out. We were going to capture. I don't think we had a dull moment at all in any of those long flights.
How many books did you read?
Yeah, I didn't read a book, never got them out, but we were constantly trying to communicate, constantly trying to relay, even on these 8-hour flights, trying to.
We literally stayed busy flying the airplane. One of the things we have told a lot of people is that from the time we got to Nova Scotia until we got to Australia, we had to hand fly the airplane because the autopilot broke.
Oh.
The other thing we want to quickly say, I know we're out of time, God was on our side on this flight, or some angel, whoever you want to perceive, the Spirit was on our side. Our last arrival here was in July 30th in Cedar Rapids. We snuck in from Colorado into Ankeny, so we were close to be home at 9 o'clock in the morning. We were filling the plane up at 11 o'clock at night with fuel. I looked down and said, John, there's some oil down underneath the plane. He says, no, that's from some other plane. Came back the next morning, there was a lot of oil underneath the plane. We had blown up an oil leak on the engine. We burn normally 1 quart every 6 hours. In the flight from Colorado to Ankeny, at less than a 3-hour flight, we went through 3.5 quarts of oil. Had that happened 4 days earlier or 6 days earlier, we've been over the Pacific and never made land. When we got back to Cedar Rapids, the plane had not performed the speed we wanted, so we took it into the mechanic and said, what's wrong? Nobody could find it on the problem. The entire flight. He looked at the engine and he says, you have 6 cylinders. Only 4 of them are working. You got 2 bad cylinders. And so we made it home.
They were all 6 working. 2 of them were just working as good as they should have been.
Yeah. But, so, you know, this trip was because of the faith of us, and the faith of our families, and the faith of Rotary, and the belief that what we're doing, all of us are doing to eradicate polio is above our pay grade. We're simply the mechanism. Thank you. And we'll be able to stay behind if anybody has questions.
Thank you.
May I say one thing? George Mills was an RMT reporter, and in one of his books, he wrote about the polio victims who were at Iowa Methodist Hospital.
Oh, yeah.
You had a great one here.
Yeah.
Yeah, your children's hospital here was phenomenal.
I tell you what, I have heard some of this, other times I hear it now, and I still have goosebumps running through my spine. It's just amazing, We're so grateful for what you've done and how persistence 3 times to try to get it going, and you still did it, so thank you. So in your honor, we have purchased a book that we are donating to the Des Moines Public Library, and that book will become part of the Rotary Rosie Reader Van. It travels around Des Moines, and our club had donated $40,000 to the Des Moines Public Library Foundation to purchase this van a few years ago. So thank you again. We're so happy and grateful that you came today. So we have some fun things scheduled coming up. We've got Second Chance Tuesday next week, Tuesday the 13th of February at Big Grove Brewery. And as always, the fun and fellowship is free, and drinks and food are on your own expense. And remember, we do not have a meeting here next Thursday at noon because February Fling is on Friday, February the 16th. President-elect Kevin's going to have a great time for us at Hyperion, and that the registration for that did close on the end of January. And we want to thank our sponsors, Third Ag, and also an anonymous sponsor for this annual event that's hosted by our president-elect. Okay, February 23rd, we have another night to go enjoy the Iowa Wolves with Polio Plus donations that night for the chapters in the area. And you can still get tickets to attend. You can sign up at your lunch table. And if you don't want to attend, you just want to buy the tickets and donate it to one of the children's organizations in town, that can be done as well. We also have 2 of our District 6000 Rotary Foundation socials that are happening here in central Iowa. You can choose to attend those. They're both on a Monday evening between 5:30 and 7. The first one is in Boone on the 19th of February at Cedar Point Golf Course. The second one is in Grimes at Destination Grill on Monday, February 26th. These are casual events open to all Rotarians, and they include a short program about the good work of the Rotary Foundation. District Governor Dennis Drager and his wife Heidi let us know that there's no cost to attend, but to leave, you have to purchase one of the Zoo of Love plushie toys for $40, and $30 of that is going to go to the Polio Plus donation to Rotary Foundation in the donor's name. And there's flyers about that also out at the name badge table. Upcoming events. Remember to RSVP any guests you'd like to bring. You need to go directly to Kitty with that, and you need to know that by 9 a.m. on Wednesday morning, the day before the event, if you can, because you cannot register your guests online. On February 15th, we talked about no meeting. We have the fling on that Friday night. And then Des Moines Mayor Connie Bozen is going to come speak with us on February 22nd, followed by Kelsey Brown and Catherine Kunert with Mid-Iowa Energy on the 29th. With that, bring this inspirational meeting to a close. Thank you for being a vital part of the Rotary Club of Des Moines. You're what makes us tick. And the Rotary Club of Des Moines, Melissa, we're grateful to be able to introduce you and that you are a part of our club. And here I have to say, until we meet again, have fun and do good in the name of Rotary. We are adjourned.